Are you ready for the day the lights don't come back on? Because here's the truth. America, the grid is weaker than ever. In the last decade alone, power outages across the U.S. have skyrocketed by over 60%, and the average blackout now lasts twice as long as it did just 10 years ago. That means when the power cuts, you're sitting in the dark for hours, maybe days, while your fridge rots and your phone dies. And don't fool yourself. This isn't rare anymore. Extreme weather, cyber attacks, and even deliberate shutdowns are happening right now in your backyard. I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about what's already killing people in Texas, California, and Hawaii when the grid collapses under pressure. And while the government tells you to stay calm, billionaires are quietly buying bunkers because they know how fragile this system really is. So let me ask you again. Are you ready for the day America goes dark? 9. Fragile global supply chains for grid components. Here's the part nobody talks about because it's too terrifying to admit. We literally cannot fix the grid fast enough if something goes wrong. Over 80% of the large power transformers used in the United States are imported, mainly from South Korea, Germany, and yes, China. These monsters aren't like a toaster you can grab off Amazon. We're talking about machines the size of a house that weigh over 400,000 pounds each. And the kicker? They take 18 to 24 months to manufacture, ship, and install under ideal conditions. Now think about this. The Department of Energy reported in 2023 that the United States only has a handful of emergency spare transformers nationwide. That's it. A handful for an entire country of 330 million people. If even a small wave of transformers failed simultaneously, we'd be sitting in the dark for years, not weeks, not months, years. And supply chains are breaking down more every year. Pandemic-era shipping delays still haven't recovered. Steel shortages are worse than ever, and rising geopolitical tensions make foreign suppliers unreliable. If China decides to cut us off or worse, sabotage exports, it's game over. Imagine thousands of transformers blowing after a solar flare or cyber attack and realizing the replacement line is backed up until 2027. The politicians won't admit this, but that's the terrifying truth. The grid is a single-point failure system with no backup. And that's why this problem isn't just an inconvenience, it's a guaranteed collapse scenario waiting for the right spark. 8 droughts are quietly killing hydropower. Most people think of power outages as storms, sabotage, or aging wires, but here's one that will blindside you. Water scarcity. You may not realize it, but hydropower still provides almost 28% of renewable electricity in the United States, and in states like Washington, Oregon, and California, the numbers are even higher. The Colorado River Basin, which supplies water to over 40 million Americans, has been running at historic lows. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the 2 largest reservoirs in the U.S., have dropped so low in recent years that turbines have literally been inches away from shutting down. The Bureau of Reclamation has warned multiple times that dead pool status, where dams can't produce electricity at all, is no longer science fiction, it's a near-future probability. Imagine millions of people across the Southwest and California losing hydropower during peak summer demand, when air conditioning is already straining the grid. In 2022 alone, drought cut hydropower generation by 17% nationwide, and projections for 2025 are even worse. Pair that with hotter summers pushing demand up by double digits, and you've got the perfect storm: no water to run turbines, no electricity to cool homes, and rolling blackouts stretching from Phoenix to Los Angeles. Add in food production collapses from those same droughts, and you've got a grid that isn't just stressed, it's crumbling. This isn't decades away, it's already happening, and the numbers prove it. People say water wars are coming, but here's the truth. The first casualty of water wars is power. And once the dams stop spinning, the lights go out. 7. Geopolitical tensions and energy warfare. If you think blackouts are just a technical issue, let me pull you into the real world. Energy is now a weapon of war. The United States grid doesn't exist in a bubble. It's part of a global chessboard where Russia, China, and rogue states know the easiest way to cripple a modern nation is to cut the lights. During the Ukraine war, Russia targeted over half of Ukraine's power infrastructure with missiles and drones, proving beyond doubt that the grid is the most vulnerable target in any conflict. Do you really think America is untouchable? In 2023, U.S. officials admitted that Chinese hackers had planted malware in power systems tied to military bases in Guam, a blatant test run for disrupting electricity during a conflict over Taiwan. Let that sink in. The Pentagon has gone on record saying that if China wanted to, it could trigger blackouts in multiple U.S. regions tomorrow, not with bombs, but with keystrokes. Meanwhile, the Middle East is in flames again, oil supply chains are fragile, and the U.S. grid increasingly relies on natural gas shipped through pipelines that can be sabotaged as easily as Russia blew up Nord Stream. Think about that: one pipeline rupture, and half the Northeast goes dark in the dead of winter. Energy is war now, and the grid is the battlefield. If you're still treating blackouts like local weather nuisances, you're years behind reality. The lights will go out, not because of storms or age, but because rival nations know the grid is America's Achilles heel. 6. Extreme weather is outpacing the grid. Here's a reality check. The grid was built for a climate that no longer exists. When engineers designed most of America's transmission lines and substations back in the 1950s through 19, they weren't planning for back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes, weeks-long polar vortex freezes, or megafires burning hotter than steel. But that's exactly what we're living through now. In just the last 3 years, extreme weather has caused more blackouts than the entire previous decade combined. In 2021, Winter Storm Uri froze Texas and left 4.5 million people without power. In 2022, Hurricane Ian caused one of the largest grid failures in Florida history, knocking out electricity for 2.7 million customers. And in 2023, wildfires in Hawaii wiped out power across Maui, sparking one of the deadliest fire disasters in U.S. history. The numbers don't lie. Weather-related outages have jumped 67% since 2000, and costs to the economy are now topping $150 billion annually. The system was never built to handle these stresses, and utilities can't keep up. They're still repairing wooden poles while 120 miles per hour winds rip across entire states. They're still stringing 50-year-old lines while record-breaking heat waves melt transformers into puddles. The shocking part: even the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission admitted last year that most utilities have no comprehensive plan to handle climate extremes beyond patch it up and pray. That's not resilience, that's desperation. And when you connect those dots, the message is clear. Every new storm season isn't just about flooding or fire damage, it's a direct countdown to grid collapse. 5. Exploding demand from AI and electric vehicles. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: demand. You're being told the future is green energy and digital transformation, but here's the dirty secret: our grid cannot handle it. Not even close. The push for electric vehicles means millions of new cars will soon rely entirely on the grid, with projections showing electricity demand rising 20% by 2030 just from EVs alone. That's the equivalent of adding the energy demand of an entire state like California to the grid, without building a single new power plant. Now layer in the artificial intelligence boom: data centers, which already consume 2% of U.S. electricity, are on track to quadruple by 2035. A single AI data center gulps down as much power as 50,000 homes, and there are hundreds more under construction right now. Just last year, Northern Virginia, home to the largest data center cluster in the world, had to halt new developments because the grid couldn't keep up. Do you see where this is going? By 2030, the International Energy Agency warns that data centers could use as much electricity as the entire nation of Japan. Meanwhile, utilities are lagging, permits are stuck in red tape, and generation projects take a decade to approve. So what's the plan? There isn't one. They'll patch holes with rolling blackouts, ration power in high-demand regions, and leave consumers holding the bag. The truth is brutal: the grid is already maxed out, and we're piling on a tidal wave of new demand that makes outages inevitable. This isn't progress, it's a setup for disaster. 4. Wildfire threats and liability-driven shutdowns. Here's a reason that's already hitting millions of Americans every single summer: deliberate blackouts to prevent wildfires. California is the prime example, but the trend is spreading nationwide. Utilities like Pacific Gas and Electric PG&E have been found legally liable for sparking catastrophic wildfires due to poorly maintained equipment, fires that killed over 100 people and burned entire towns like Paradise to the ground. After paying out tens of billions in damages and even declaring bankruptcy in 2019, PG&E adopted a terrifying new strategy. They just cut the power. That's right, when wind speeds pick up, or fire danger reaches critical levels, they shut off electricity to millions of homes and businesses to reduce risk. In 2022 alone, PG&E's public safety power shutoffs affected 2.1 million Californians. Think about what that means. Families in triple-digit heat losing air conditioning, hospitals scrambling to power life-saving equipment, grocery stores tossing out rotting food. And it's not just California. Oregon, Colorado, and even parts of Arizona are adopting similar strategies as mega droughts fuel firestorms across the West. The grid is now caught in a vicious cycle. Aging equipment sparks fires, lawsuits bankrupt utilities respond by cutting power, and communities are left stranded in the dark. And as fire seasons grow longer, now practically year-round in some states, these safety shutoffs aren't temporary measures, they're the new normal. That's not resilience, that's surrender. When your power company is so terrified of its own grid that it chooses blackouts over risk, you know the system has already failed. 3. Cyber attacks are escalating into open warfare. You need to hear this because it's happening right now under your nose. The power grid isn't just old and overworked, it's digitally exposed. In 2023, the U.S. government reported a 60% increase in cyber intrusions targeting energy infrastructure compared to 2022. And these aren't amateurs. We're talking about state-backed hacker groups from Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea probing every weakness. In fact, the FBI revealed that Chinese-linked groups have already gained access to control systems at multiple utilities, meaning they don't just steal data, they can literally flip the switch. Think about that. A foreign adversary could plunge parts of America into darkness without ever firing a shot. The Department of Homeland Security has warned that malware known as black energy, first used in the 2015 Ukraine blackout, has been found on U.S. systems. And it gets worse. The average utility company spends only 5% of its budget on cybersecurity. That's like leaving your front door open in the middle of a crime wave. Meanwhile, ransomware gangs are selling grid access data on the dark web for cash. Every second we stay connected, we're inviting a silent war that's already being fought through keyboards. A single coordinated attack could cripple multiple regions at once, and experts estimate recovery could take weeks, even months. Let me spell it out. We are already in an era of digital blackouts, and the only reason you haven't felt it yet is because hackers are waiting for the perfect moment to unleash hell. 2. The grid's aging infrastructure is already collapsing. Here's the ugly truth. The backbone of America's grid is crumbling in real time. Over 70% of transmission lines are more than 25 years old, and many are pushing 50. The expected lifespan of these lines is about 40 years. Which means millions of miles of high-voltage wires are already past their expiration date. Transformers, same story. Some of the biggest units still in operation were built during the Cold War. Imagine driving a 1970s car across the country every day for 50 years, and expecting it not to break down. That's what we're doing with the grid. The Department of Energy says that since the 19 major power outages have increased 285%. And here's the kicker, not only are outages more frequent, they're lasting longer. Between 2013 and 2021, the average outage duration doubled, leaving people in the dark for 8+ hours at a time. Why? Because when these systems fail, they fail catastrophically. There are no quick fixes. Replacing an old substation isn't like swapping out a light bulb. It takes years, permits, and billions of dollars that utilities simply don't have. And while Washington loves to talk about modernization, the reality is laughable. Federal investment is a fraction of what's needed. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave our grid a C grade, basically saying it's one storm away from collapse. Folks, this isn't tomorrow's problem. This is the reason every storm, every heat wave, every hiccup turns into a headline blackout. The grid is dying of old age, and we're all stuck on life support. 1. The looming solar superstorm threat. Now, let's talk about the biggest, scariest and most ignored reason of all, the sun itself. We're entering what scientists call the solar maximum, a peak in solar activity that happens every 11 years. And this one, NASA says it's shaping up to be one of the strongest in modern history, peaking between 2024 and 2026. That means more sunspots, more coronal mass ejections, and more chances for a solar storm to slam Earth's magnetic field. If you think that's no big deal, go look up the Carrington event of 1859. Back then, telegraph wires sparked, offices caught fire, and auroras were seen as far south as Cuba. That was 1859, before the modern grid. If that same storm hit today, the National Academy of Sciences estimates it would cause $2 trillion in damage in the first year alone, and take out power to over 130 million people. Here's the nightmare. High-voltage transformers would literally explode from the surge. And remember what I said earlier, those transformers take years to replace. Years. A true solar superstorm wouldn't just knock out power for days, it could end electricity in entire regions for a decade. And don't think the elites don't know this. Billionaires are buying private islands and underground bunkers, quietly preparing for a scenario they know is out of human control. Because here's the brutal truth, no government, no army, no billionaire can stop the sun. If the storm hits, the grid is gone, and society with it. That's the ultimate wild card, and it's not an if, it's a when.